Deathworlds, the most overused term in the galaxy. I hate it. We all use it. All 9 of the sentient, intelligent life forms in the galaxy all thought their world was a death world. And technically speaking, yes, they are all correct. Every planet wherein sentient life has arisen has been ideal for them, and certain death for all alien life forms. So technically, all life-bearing planets are death worlds. Take my planet, for example. The gravity is so painfully high compared to the other worlds, any alien life form upon the surface is almost incapable of movement without mechanical help. Or then there is Strodom. Its atmosphere is life-bearing and awesome for a myriad of homegrown species and ecosystems. Everything from off-world takes one look and dies from all the arsenic. Yeltrob has vast, abundant oceans, which teem with life and some of the most complex environmental ecosystems known. The selfsame oceans also tend to dissolve anything that hasn't had a few billion years evolutionary protection. Even our machines dissolve in the sulfuric goop of Yeltrob's waters. Earth has so much oxygen in it, we are constantly amazed the whole planet doesn't combust. Gray's electromagnetic storms destroy anything that hasn't adapted and developed a proximal sense to know when a strike will happen. Urata's ice-cold pitch-black oceans contain whole cities at pressures not seen outside of the inner part of gas giants. And speaking of gas giants, they exist as a civilization floating amidst ammonium clouds and hydrogen thermals. You leave your ship anywhere on TG, and you die very quickly. And of course, the solar radiation that life on Hulayan thrives upon is instantly fatal to any and all living creatures not from Hulayan. Each and every one of our worlds is a paradise to us, the residents, the species who grew up there. Each is filled with abundant life in countless myriad forms, which through billions of years of evolution have evolved to live there. And everything else dies. Not nice death either. It's usually horrific. So, yeah. Death worlds. Silly name, really. And then you have to consider that these places are the literal oasis of life out in space. For each of the 9 worlds, there are about 250 million places where it was too brutal for any kind of life to emerge. Dead worlds. Either too cold, or too hot, or no atmosphere, or too much atmosphere. Nothing lives on them. And in between, the eternal darkness, the void, the gap between the stars, which you know kills everything, except a few extremophile bacteria, but even they can only last a few hundred years before even they die. So, the bottom line is each of the species has had to, at one point or another, realize that yes, their world is a death world, but so is everyone else's. Of course, we all wonder, which one of us has the tougher death world? I mean, just for bragging rights. Yeah, all of us want bragging rights. It's almost impossible to judge really, but sentience being sentience, we found a way. Of course we did. So how did we discover a way to brag? Contamination. Because obviously, while we're aware of it, and we all take such things seriously, every one of our probes is scout ships, diplomatic cutters, tradecrafty, and countersuits. They all ended up being covered in microscopic life forms who piggyback, as the humans say, along with them, hidden in nooks and hard-to-reach places. And there they wait until our probe scout ships, diplomatic cutters, tradecraft, counters tradecraft, and countersuits reach another one of the 9 worlds. And then, well, as the Herflunts say, they try and swim in new waters. There have been over 60,000 documented cases of microbial life forms from one planet contaminating previously pristine alien ecosystems over the centuries. Luckily, None has led to the alien microbes doing devastating things. In fact, all died, eventually. But as I said, sentience being sentience, while all of us were aghast and horrified to have done this, we all secretly hoped our little microbes could or would last longer on the other worlds than other species' microbes would last on ours. And this is why we ended up with the adaptability numbers AKV Teshum scales, AK, the Death World score. Like many, I bet you assume that the Death World score is some complicated formula, right? It isn't. Sure, it is complex, but at its heart is a real simple equation. So, every single contamination was tracked and logged and categorized, and each category was placed into new criteria, and more data was analyzed, and eventually, you get the two numbers. The Death World score is honestly just two numbers. The first number was based on how long a certain planet's little microbes could last in the new ecosphere. This was the hardest thing to work out. Why? You try find a universal time signature we could all agree upon using. 1 day on Gaia was less than half a day on Strodom, which was shorter than Earth's, and Earth's day is 347 times shorter than a single day on T. The Herflunt of Urata don't even count days, as you know. They never saw their sun. Finding a scale was hard, really hard. Trust me. Eventually, after that big trade deal, the scientists agreed to follow the merchants, and we went with a Hakan day length, which of course meant we had to then translate everything into Hakan base, 8 mathematics. But once we calmed everyone's raised quills, we could all at least agree that with a few adjustments, we could work with the Hekanian mathematical and dating system. So with this, we could roughly, all of us, agree upon a scale. So when you simplify it all down, you can work out the first question. How long does a planet's microbial life forms last on another world? If it gets a 1, it means it dies instantly. If it gets an 8, it means it survives and thrives. And as I said, nothing gets an 8. The second number was basically how many planets, aside from the planet of origin, could the microbes survive past a short period of time? That led to at least 2 species rolling out of the scientific conferences on this, as there are 9 planets, and we were having to use Hakan base 8 mathematics, and they thought it was silly. But eventually we calmed them down by pointing out that if you ignore your world, there are 8 other planets. So it fits. So, roughly, you get 2 numbers from 1 to 8, and that's your Death World score. So, if a microbe found on the world survives for a few hours on Urata, but nowhere else, then it would be a 2.1. First number, how long the microbial life form lasts. Second, being number of planets it can exist upon beyond its own. With me so far? Good. My planet's microbes come in at a standard 4.4. They can last a while, but only on about half the planets. On the rest of them, die instantly. Now the microbial extremophiles from Strodom comes in with a 7 for the first number, but an overall 7.3 for its adaptation. Its microbes, when they can survive, are tough. So Strodom was all proud of this for a while. Then Earth got involved. See, while only getting a 5 for the first number, scores the only perfect 8. Their microbes don't last that long in other systems, but they do try to. So an overall score of 5.8. While Strodom's last longer, Earths are able to get footholds on all. So, of course, the Jalal of Strodom and the humans of Earth immediately started bragging about their world being tougher, and as well as rubbing everyone's nose ganglia breath tube in it. Honestly, I personally think this was what caused that skirmish out by the Ioskar gas cloud a few decades back. I know it was a row over mineral rights that escalated, and after the deaths of so many, everyone sat back and calmed down. But I swear to you, the humans and Jalal have been increasingly intolerant of one another, only since the adaptability numbers arguments began. And then, A Getsanti-discovered green microbial life form living in waste dumped by a HE craft, which they maintain was a 6.8, which would give them the title of toughest microbes. But honestly, you should have seen the speed at which the Jalal and the humans and the contested that number. They said the microbe was only able to survive in HE waste material, which was a nice mini-green ecosystem and not the actual environment. Huge rows. Seriously. The Getsanti expelled diplomats from Strotum because of comments made by the Hive Queen of the Jalal. The Jalal have taken great umbrage at this, and this is why we are facing an emergency session of the Assembly. And it doesn't help that the bloody humans have just announced they are increasing. Military spending and the Hieti are suddenly all hysteric, saying they refuse to stick around because everyone is making sly comments about their digestion. For me, it illustrates just one true fact. Sentient life is kinda weird, but then, given what we had to do to become sentient life, I shouldn't be surprised. So, yeah, anyway, Deathworlds. I hate that term.